I'd like to introduce Dr. Carol Marshall. Dr. Carol Marshall is coming from the National Department of Health, and she will be giving us an update on the District Clinical Specialist Team program. Carol?
Yes, it's up. How do I find it? Okay. I'm speaking as the National Coordinator of the District Clinical Specialist Teams. And it's in that light that I've been given 5 minutes. So no pleasantries, no greetings, nothing. Just I'm going to try and deal with it. Okay. So we had a bit of history yesterday. I just want you to understand that history can also be short. So the DCSTs are where are they? They're at about the kind of preschool, just about to enter school. So that's the stage at which they're at. I've no idea how good their early nurturing was. But having joined about last year, you can see a brief outline of how new a baby the DCSTs are. I think in terms of a big national program, this is very new. So there have been a couple of reviews. There was dedicated national support, but that ended at the end of 2014. And I've been sort of trying to catch up to speed since the beginning of last year. A big message that came to us from the National Health Council at the end of during 2015 was we have to get our maternal mortality down. And that then expanded into getting neonatal and child mortality down. And as I listened to this very, very, very impressive panel this morning, I was thinking to myself, somebody made a statement that this is built on the back of huge success in bringing mortality down. And I just think we need to be aware that that is not the case everywhere. That there are still many places in South Africa where our mortality is unacceptably high. And that led to the tabling of an integrated plan that Natasha Roda referred to yesterday, of an integrated plan for bringing down mortality in mothers, neonates and children that was approved by the National Health Council. So very briefly, I debated whether to do slides. If you look at the green center, we must remember that the DCSTs are essentially a clinical intervention to improve clinical quality of care. Well, this thing is really intimidating. To improve clinical quality of care through a clinical governance approach. And you can see the 4 pillars of clinical governance there. I'm not going to try to read them. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the DCSTs. If you aren't, I'm not going to be able to help you now. If you look at the green side, you can see that I debated with myself a lot about the relative size of those arrows. So the DCSTs were created through clinical governance to have an impact on that big red arrow. The improved clinical outcomes, and particularly the reduction of preventable or avoidable deaths. And to me, one of the big challenges, if you can read really fast, as Neil said, think really fast, you can see some of the capacity challenges that the DCSTs still have on the left. So there were supposed to be over 300 of them. At the moment, we're only about 60% filled, and you can see some of the statistics. So we have about 30 districts where there is a tolerably functional team. Only 6 where the full vision is being implemented. So one of the challenges is, can the DCSTs deliver on what was expected given their capacity? On the right-hand side, you can see an outline of what we are now putting on the table for this first survive phase of the 5-year strategic plan, recognizing that survive can't stand alone. You don't do it, and then when you've done it, you go back and do the rest. The things have to run in parallel. But just that tiny little green arrow in the middle of the big broad one is my attempt to show that in about half the country, the clinical governance intervention designed by the national ministry, national department, is not really capacitated enough to be able to make a difference. However, that said, big question, are the DCSTs making a difference? So how do we show this? How do we strengthen what they're doing? And some of the session, what you're going to hear in the session today is the beginnings of an attempt to answer that question. And to me, unquestionably, the answer is yes. There are enormously encouraging, promising practices. We ran a symposium a couple of weeks ago in the middle of October. We solicited inputs, concepts from the DCSTs. We got 40 responses in a turnaround time of about 5 days. We ran a very, very exciting symposium, and from that symposium, the inputs you will hear today were selected from that symposium and form part of our attempt to answer those two questions. How do we show the difference the DCSTs are making, and how do we help them to make this difference? The concepts you will hear, or the inputs you will hear, have been grouped into two broad sessions with discussion in between. The first, broadly, is trying to show how health system responses, such as microplanning or such as targeted training, has been built on the basis of local data and has used that local information to tailor what they do, be it statistics, be it the situation analysis, the physical situation in which people find themselves, and especially the issue of preventable deaths. The second set of presentations is more broadly about wider partnerships, how the DCSTs have played that critical interlinking role in pulling other players around the data that we have in order to make a difference. Thank you.